Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. On today's show, I have Heather Petersen. This has got a long bio. You're going to have to wait to listen to hear all about it. But have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Come on, man. Never? Come on, girl. Never? You listen to podcasts. Everybody that listens to podcasts wants to start their own podcast. That's kind of how it works. So if you want to do it real nice and easy, you go to getagripstudios.com. Anywhere in the world, fully virtual. And my guest, Heather, right now, we're in the virtual studio. She's in Minnesota, I'm in Toronto, and we're talking. That's how it works in 2020. You go to getagripstudios.com. Whoa. Hello, Heather Petersen. How are you?
Hello, I'm so great. How are you?
You're looking dangerous today.
Dangerous is a good word for how I'm feeling. Yes.
Yeah, I love that word. I love that word, dangerous and nasty. So nasty. It's so good, right? So tell me a little bit. The first line of the bio you sent says Heather Petersen has ditched the stilettos for chore boots. But I feel like you still don't have anything against stilettos.
Oh no, and I still wear them, but I'm working on ditching them.
Okay.
So yeah.
You go ahead. So what's the majority of the time? Heather is a proud founder of a magical place called the FEM Farm. Let's kick right into that. What's the FEM Farm?
Absolutely. So right now I'm coming at you from the FEM Farm. I'm in my office, one of my favorite places. And the FEM Farm is a place for women to come in celebration of feminine energy and to really hone into relaxing and surrounding themselves with beauty and connecting with other women. So it sounds very simple, but it's a place that we don't have in the Midwest specifically. That's catered specifically toward women to connect with one another. So it's a really cool hobby farm on 20 acres in Glencoe, Minnesota. And I have a really great house. It's about 3,500 square feet.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, so I can fit a lot of ladies in here. I have a beautiful wraparound porch. And I have two gigantic buildings. I have one big red barn, where I can put animals or people in there. I haven't decided yet. And then the other one is something I will convert into a co-working space, probably a wedding space, event space, very versatile. And it's right now a pole building. So that is one of my biggest things. My first project, I guess, at the FEM Farm. So a lot of room to run around. It's going to be very gardeny. So I just bought this place at the end of November. So November of 2019. So I'm still getting used to everything and still, honestly, I'm a city girl. So I'm adjusting to the new farm life and having no neighbors and all of that. But it's kind of lovely. I'm really just surrendering to it. And I think people really enjoy it here.
You said the word gardeny, and I'm not ashamed to say that I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean when you say that. But tell me why, in all seriousness, though, why is it that it seems popular right now for women to have a place to go that is free of men? Okay. So, free of the male presence. Where they can go and be with other women and for various themed activities, but for what was kind of surrounding a sense of meditative practice and quietude and relaxation. Am I getting it right? Is that what you're trying to provide for women?
I mean, that's part of it.
If yes, why is it important for women to do that?
Yeah, great question. And I do have to say, we love men at the FEM Farm. We do. We love them very much. And actually, part of why I'm focused specifically on women is because we've just been sort of our energy or feminine energy. Everybody has an masculine and feminine energy. And even men have feminine energy. And I think by getting other women who mostly have feminine energy, but it might be not as leveraged or used on a daily basis or even appreciated, it's just it can't help but come out when you are with other women, and there are no distractions of men folk around. And then just sort of connecting with other women, sort of like it's like a button, just pushes the button, and then we sort of flourish into our feminine through our connection. So that's kind of the point. I have a lot of men who do a lot of work for me at the farm right now, which is really great. I appreciate them very much. So I
Yeah,
do
no,
want to say that.
I don't feel any tyrannical feminism here. I mean, it's not anti-men. It's
Right.
it's just that we need separate spaces from time to time. I think one of the things that's interesting that you talked about when people refer to feminine energy and masculine energy as opposed to the male and the female. I mean, so
Hmm.
the male has an appendage as a sex organ. That's what makes him well. We're not going to go down that road, but you know what I'm
Right.
talking about here, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is predominantly masculine in their energy. Okay.
Exactly.
And my belief is that I think acknowledging the existence of the feminine and the masculine as an energy or as a force, and a lot of people are
Mhm.
uncomfortable with the word energy. They're like, oh, woo, 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 woo. But like, we're driven by these archetypal spiritual energies. There's no doubt
Mhm.
about it. And
Absolutely.
and I don't care what anyone says about anything. There's these energies in us, and we're driven by them. And I think the first step for most people, whether they're male or female, is to acknowledge that. And once they acknowledge that, it's impossible not to explore it, Heather.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a curiosity that I had. I didn't understand it. People would say masculine and feminine, and I didn't get it. So I actually dove quite deeply into some research to figure out the differences. And then I was very astonished to even learn what feminine energy was. And I mean, as an example, I made lists here because I get nervous. So
Sure.
my list is so masculine energy is doing, thinking, analyzing, decision making, leading, giving, releasing. So
Hmm.
that's very masculine when you think about it. And then feminine is feeling, expressing, intuiting, or like just being intuitive, being, following, receiving, and creating. So, I mean, beautiful energies, especially when they are used together in an equal, balanced way within each of us. As an example, like,
I think you're right, except for the word equal. That's the only thing you said there that I didn't like.
okay, I got you.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure it
because
needs to be equal. I think it needs to be balanced, but I'm not sure
balanced. Yeah,
balance is equality. Like I'm
yeah,
uncomfortable with that word equality.
yeah,
I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't think
yeah.
everyone
No, I
needs to have an
agree.
equal amount of feminine and masculine energy. I don't think that's right. I think some people do. I think there are people that do, but I think there are
Hmm.
people that are heavily feminine energy, and that they can be
Hmm.
men. They can be men,
Hmm. I
and
know a few of them.
not
Yep.
most of the time. Most of the time, it's women that
Hmm.
are heavy in feminine energy. But I think that I don't think it needs to be equal. Are we on the same page there?
Yes, yes, and that is, yeah. Balanced is a better word. Balanced for the individual
You
is a
said
better.
balanced and equality, but I think you would mean
Hmm.
balanced,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you for calling me out on that. Yes,
I don't
absolutely.
mean to call you out. I just want to be clear because these are kind of you can mix things in that I think are wrong in these
Yeah,
scenarios.
yeah. No, I appreciate that call out.
Not a call out,
So,
Heather Peterson.
well, I think call outs are good. I
Okay.
want someone to tell
All right.
me
As long
when
as you think
they're.
it's good.
I'm
All
open
right.
to that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. All right. Good.
I don't think of it as a bad thing. Yeah, I'm open to that. I'm receiving
So
that.
let me ask you something. Okay. So I really
Sure,
liked your description, but I'd like to add to it. I
sure.
think that the feminine energy is the creative energy.
Mhm,
It's that which creates.
mhm,
Okay. I also think it's the selective energy. I think it's that
mhm.
which selects. Okay.
Discerning. Yes.
Yes, but selects also, like
Mhm,
even who buys the cars in households. What a mistake marketing people made for years that they thought
mhm.
men bought cars and houses, but really it's mostly the women that choose the car the family is going to buy. Most of the
Yep.
buying decisions, most of the selecting is done by women, right? Um, Including the sexual selection, which is
Mhm.
done by women as well. So I think that, and I also I'm kind of obsessed. People would say I'm obsessed with the idea of the womb. I think that's such an interesting way to think about men and women and the feminine and the
Mhm.
masculine is the womb, the received womb, the receiving you talked about. The womb
Yep.
receives and creates, right?
Mhm.
And when we talk about in French, they have feminine and masculine words. And I think the train is a masculine word, le train, and la gare is a feminine word. So the train is received at the
Mhm.
male train is received at the female station. That's really
How
weird how
beautiful,
that
right?
works, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
it's such a wonderful idea. So I think you're on the right track. Or not, with what your thought is. How does it work in
Mhm.
a business? Like, how are you going to take this and turn it into, or I don't know if it's a business or just a place where people gather and spend time. How do you plan to do that?
It's actually a really beautiful segue, talking about womb space, because that's what I want to create. Is
Hmm.
the Fem Farm is womb space. Like, this is where we are free to be creative. This is where new ideas will be birthed. This is where our chaos, feminine is very chaotic, whereas men are more
Hmm.
orderly and stable, or masculine, I should say. So, definite womb space. That was on my mind when I was looking for properties. I needed a beautiful house that felt welcoming, like you were coming home to like your grandma's house, or just it just felt very welcoming and womb space, like just beautiful, and um just just like a coming home kind of a feeling. And I'll tell you, I've worked really hard to I didn't have to work super hard to create it. I had to work hard to make it my own, because there was a lot of beautiful womb space energy here. And this whole property is actually very, I call the farm a her. And she
Hmm.
called to me. She was very magnetic. It was like, when I'm away, I want to be at the farm. This is, she calls to me. She's like, okay, you've been gone long enough. Come back, come back. So, and that's, what the feminine energy does. So it's a beautiful place. It's like a vortex of beautiful magnetism. So,
Hmm.
that alone is where some of the magic is.
How to turn it into a then now we look at the entrepreneurial side, which is the feminine creative force, right? That which
Mhm,
does not exist being brought into reality, right? So an
mhm,
idea comes in to the womb, it is nurtured, and then birth is
yes.
given, right? So
Mhm,
the entrepreneurial force is a feminine force. um,
mhm,
how are you going to, because at the end of the day you need to turn your beauty and that into dollars and cents and profit and loss.
exactly.
How do you plan to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm still working on that. But a lot of the plans, are sort of, I am right now sort of putting myself in receiving mode and just telling the story. And, I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential here and a lot of things I know not of. I will tell you that I have, about 4, retreat events coming up this summer. So people will be staying at the house, and, I'll make some money off of that. That's how we'll profit, but we have to get started. Right now, the most important thing is getting feedback on the property and what it needs, because it's brand new. It's a brand new idea, brand new business. So, I'm right now honoring feedback more than I'm honoring funds. So I am still working my full time job. So I'm sort of bootstrapping everything
Mm.
and working in, the masculine corporate world. But eventually, it will be it will be really wonderful to fully work here at the farm and get everything up and running and have this be my full-time job. So the profit model right now, as it stands, is retreats and events. Um, so people could come in, practitioners. I have a few different phone calls with a few practitioners this week, even, that just want to bring people in, for health and wellness purposes. So we have a few yoga practitioners. I have a couple other specialized exercise and spiritual connection, entrepreneurs coming in. I have a sound healer that wants to bring some people to a place, which is very cool. That's a whole other subject we could talk forever about. There's some Reiki
Sound
practitioners.
healing?
Yes. So the tuning forks and like
Sure.
having them being aligned with like the chakras and clearing the chakras, if you know
Okay,
what
so I'm
the
going to make a
chakras are.
confession here, folks, on the Get a Grip on Life podcast. I absolutely love Reiki, okay? And I think that
Oh,
it's listen, Reiki is the woo woo of the woo woo. So if you're skeptical at all, it's not time for you to go have a session of Reiki. Um, no, seriously, like you have to kind of, if you're like a skeptical man like I was when I started on my spiritual journey, um,
mhm.
you don't start with Reiki, because you're gonna think what's happening here, but
Yeah.
Reiki's such a wonderful thing. I mean, I would say that um, Reiki is like meditation, a form of it's like meditation. It's it's the vibrations of a good massage mixed with the beauty of a guided meditation. How's that?
Beautiful. I like that. I feel like meditation is, a lot of silence and sort of maybe receiving information, whereas Reiki is like you're there to do work. You're there to
Mm.
as a person receiving it, you are receiving the healing, but your body's working really hard on healing. So I kind of separate those two in my head, but I did like your description.
I think I was wrong. I think you're right. I think it's um it's more like prayer than meditation.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, it's more like an asking for healing, and then
Intention setting and all of
yes,
that.
yes, it's more like prayer than meditation. You're right, absolutely. So are you going to be setting up like you're going to have to be bringing in various people to come and work for you as consultants, and you're going to be creating
Yep.
events.
Yep.
Um, yeah, you got a mountain in front of you, Heather Peterson.
I sure do, and I'm so excited to climb it.
Okay. So, have you had any events yet? You said you have a couple planned for the summer.
Yes, a couple. I'm one of my big projects I'm working on is getting flooring in my one of my buildings. Right now, there's dirt floor on one side, so I just want to get some concrete poured and get that all going, so then we can turn it into magical things. At least so it doesn't get gross in there for the summer, and so it's more all season. This is Minnesota, so it gets kind of wild with weather. So
Sure,
flooring's important.
sure.
So yeah, so that's one of the first things I'm going to focus on, and after that happens, I think it'll be pretty great to just effortlessly bring people in because this place is so awesome. Everybody I talk to is excited about it. People want to come visit. I've already received a lot of great furniture from people and help from people, which is really great. People just they when they get here, they make it theirs, which I love. They're like, "Oh, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to hang some plants, and we're going to have a bonfire." So they already come in and claim it. And I love that so much. That means they
Hmm.
love it and they want to be a part of it.
Hmm. Can I ask you some personal questions about yourself?
Absolutely.
Tell me about your career. Where did you start when so you're from Minnesota. You graduated high
Yep.
school in a small town in Minnesota, just to give you some background, correct?
I'm not a small town. I was in the city um, and graduated high school. I did not go directly to college. I may have gone and did some, generals. And then I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I don't know what I want to do for school or where I want to go. So I had always worked since I was 15. My first job was at a hardware store. Now it makes sense. But
Yeah,
at the
sure.
time, everybody was like, "Wow, you worked at a hardware store?" So I've always had that sort of like hybrid personality where,
Hmm.
yes, I love wearing dresses, but I would also wear like cowboy boots. And
Hmm.
then I worked at the hardware store, but I also worked at a bank. And so I had to dress up for that, but then I had to dress down for the other job. I was always sort of that hybrid personality and never really thought about it until I am where I am now. And I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah. So I was
Hmm.
not afraid to work hard from the very beginning. And I ended up going back to school for marketing. And I went through, I think, Concordia University in St. Paul. It was a small cohort model. So it was like 15 of us in the same class,
Hmm.
which was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that, which also, now looking back, is very reflective of the small retreats that I would do here. That's kind of the size that I would
Hmm.
prefer. I think that's a really great size because you can get to know people, but yet you can kind of break off into little groups and
Hmm.
get separate experiences within that group, but still feel safe.
Hmm.
So that was lovely. But started off in banking, then marketing. Then in marketing, I did a lot of business development, so out and talking to people. And then I decided that I started working on websites from a marketing perspective and really decided that I liked the technology side of things. So then I got into IT and then I got into advertising. So I've done all of the jobs and now it's sort of it all has connected the dots to where I am now. And I've just chosen to go back to, I guess, my roots, or I've craved just a beautiful resting place to hang out for long term. I've always loved event planning and stuff like that. I've always had a nicely decorated house, and now it's all just coming together. All of the weird parts of me are now making sense and all coming together at the FEM Farm.
There's some
So
pain in your journey, though.
maybe, which there's a lot of pain. Which pain do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I just like I feel like you kind of like flew over it a little bit, right? Like the Fem Farm is not something that it's not it's both beautiful and sublime.
Yes.
It exists because it's beautiful. It's a beautiful idea, but its
Mhm.
creation comes from some darkness, I think.
Yeah, maybe. There might be some darkness. Okay, I'll go into it.
So
I think,
wherever you want to start, I can ask questions, or
yeah,
you can start wherever you
yeah.
want.
I think, as a high level spot to start is, in corporate America, there's a lot of striving, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of unfair treatment of women in general. And there's a lot of women who are working their faces off every single day. I was one of them, working a lot of hours, trying to prove myself. I didn't want it to be true that there was sexism in the workplace, but everywhere I go, there always kind of has been. There's been favoritism. There's been, oh, you can't handle that. We're going to give it to this guy. Promotions that you didn't get that you deserve. And then I think the thing that hits me the hardest on a daily basis is seeing how women are operating from their masculine energy, which is, they're trying to be 90% masculine energy. And it's not, there's two sides to every coin. So there's masculine energy, but there's a toxic and a healthy masculine energy.
Totally.
And there was a lot of toxic masculine coming from women. So that is just exhausting. So I
I
would
actually
see,
I actually think, and if I may interrupt you,
yeah,
I actually
absolutely.
I actually think that um the a lot of times what people think is toxic masculinity is toxic, but it's actually toxic femininity. And
Absolutely. I agree with that.
I think like for example, a lot of and I'm going to get back to you in a second, but just to give you an
Mhm.
example of what I think of this, I think Donald Trump is an example of toxic femininity.
Mm.
And
Yeah, say
people are
more
like,
about that.
what's that?
Say more about that. I would like to hear your
Okay.
thoughts.
Okay. So I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's just like I want to clear it up
No.
because there's a lot of talk of toxic masculinity and there's never
Mhm.
talk of toxic femininity. Never. Absolutely never. Nobody ever talks about it. And toxic femininity is extremely tyrannical. Okay. It's very judgmental because the feminine is that which selects.
Mhm.
Okay. So the feminine is that which selects, it's that which creates. Okay. And so, what a lot of people dislike and consider toxic masculinity in Donald Trump is actually femininity. And
Mhm.
it's his toxic feminine side that's being revealed. Um, a, a good man does not grab women by the pussy. That's not a
Mhm.
masculine trait. That's not what a man does. Okay? That's not a big shooter man. You're not the big dog if you do that. You're a creep, actually. Okay?
Mhm.
So if you behave like that and you talk like that, and this idea that you hear in the press that, oh, that's just locker room, cigar room talk. All men talk like that. Actually, that's not true.
They do.
Most of the good guys that I know never speak like that, actually, about women. So
Mhm.
it's actually that expression is not the toxic masculinity. It's it's actually a form of toxic femininity that he's expressing, and that's what makes people uncomfortable about him. Now, I'm not totally anti-Trump, and people who listen to this show will know that about me. That I take a measured approach and I look at things issue by issue. But I think that what people don't like about him, what they can't put their finger on, is the egotistical narcissism, yes, but it's also the toxic femininity that
Mhm.
um, that I get to have any woman I want. No, women select who they sleep with, not men.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not how it works. And as soon as you see men violating that, they're they're participating in something that is, first of all, wrong in all cultures in humanity. And
Mhm.
second of all, we know that all cultures, either the parents of a girl or the girl herself will be the selector of who she mates with or who she has sex
Mhm.
with. And that's the
Mhm.
way it's supposed to be. And people will say, "Oh, Colligan, you don't know what you're talking about." Actually, I think I do. And so I think the problem with Donald with the machismo or the toxic masculinity is that it gets confused with what's feminine and what's masculine.
Mhm.
Toxic masculinity is about power. It's about achieving power by any means. Toxic femininity, expressed in a man, is about selecting who he has sex with and forcing them to do it. It's
That's very
offending.
interesting.
That's what I think. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
So that's what I think a lot of people don't engage in, and they're not willing to look at that because they're afraid to say that. Hey, there's even a movie about it. I mean, Maleficent from Angelina Jolie is actually
One of
expressing.
my favorite movies.
There you go, the toxic
Mhm.
feminine side, right? So anyway, I
Yep.
brought you off your story. But I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes what people think is toxic masculinity is actually men expressing their toxic femininity.
Mhm.
And I think
Yep.
if people made that distinction, like the feminine is that which selects, not the masculine. And if you're offending that in a female, then you are behaving in a way. For Bill Clinton, loaded with toxic femininity, loaded with it.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong, or maybe Carl Jung could
It's very
correct me or
interesting.
something.
I'm sure people will tell us what they think. So
Maybe,
I
yeah,
await those comments, and I'm happy
sure.
to I'm happy to hear what they think. So, yeah. So getting back to my story, I think I was talking about just toxic
In the
masculine
workplace,
energy in
yeah.
corporate America, and so it's already depleting enough to be in your masculine all the time as a female,
Hmm.
and then striving and constantly doing all these things to try to prove yourself, and then you end up not knowing how to relax. You snap at your kids. All of these things happen, and it just started kind of breaking my heart a little bit. And I just realized that nobody knows what good, healthy, feminine energy looks like. Like, is there a good example of what that is in our society? I mean, I I struggled. I struggled to find it, and
Hmm.
I wanted to create that in a way that I could, which is on this farm, um, creating and just acknowledging in the first place what feminine positive energy is.
Hmm.
So that was my main
It kind of sounds
intention.
antithetical to the traditional feminist thrust, though, does it not, Heather?
How so?
Well, so you're talking about so when feminism started, or when feminism,
Mhm.
it was like there was this sense that um, uh, that first of all, I think female and male are very crude labels for people, but
I agree. Yeah.
so but let's say somebody's like they want to affect change, and there was like this, we can do that too, yay, what are you
Hmm.
talking about, right? I think there was some naivete in that, um you know and I think all enterprises start with naivete, and you got to learn your
Hmm.
lessons. But I think what happened was is that women have entered a highly masculine competitive environment, okay, which is
Hmm.
not nurturing whatsoever. And
Exactly.
that is exhausting for women. And for
Hmm.
women who are predominant, now some women who have very strong masculine natures absolutely love it. Okay, they wouldn't have it any other way. But women with very strong feminine natures find it exhausting. There's no nurturing. There's no. It's just pure throat slitting everywhere they look.
Hmm.
And but is it like, it's like, but we wanted to do what the men do, and it's
Hmm.
like there's like an error in that. It's like you need, and I think what the Fem Farm, if I'm here, is about creating a new aesthetic.
Yes. Exactly. A new way. I'm trying to be a way maker. I'm trying to create a new path. So I honor people where they are on their path right now. And I think the initial stages of feminism did that. That's what needed to happen. There needed to be an upheaval where it was. They were meeting people where they were. So it was, I mean, I can't speak to it. I did not live in that time. But it, there needed to be sort of, I guess, a layer of communication where you were speaking the same language. If you're over here talking about these, beautiful things that I'm trying to create now, nobody would have listened to them. There was no place for it. So you have to meet people where they are. And I think that's what the initial feminist movement did. It was maybe not as, we're more evolved now. So we look back at it and we're like, oh, yep, that was not really the right way. But I think it was. I genuinely think people did the right thing with what they knew, the data they
Mm.
had at the time and the experiences they had at the time. And
Hmm.
now I'm trying to do that in a different way through the FEM Farm.
Hmm. Is there something that had happened to you in your past that really that was an event that you looked to as the point? Not maybe you didn't know that the Fem Farm was going to happen, but that you you left behind a previous like a life of living this way. Were you knocked
Yes.
off that? Was it something that knocked you off that? Or was it a slow progression?
Yeah, so slow progression, and I'm entrepreneurial, as you know, and I've always had at least like two jobs. So I've worked corporate, and then I'm like, oh, I have the side gig too, trying to make money, trying to do this, trying to find what my path was, trying to find where I belonged.
Hmm.
And I realized that a lot of my friends would come to me for advice. They're like, Heather, what did I do? Or, this is happening. And I was always like the master of my friends. Like everyone was coming to me, but I didn't have anyone to support me
Hmm.
in my growth. I was like at the top of the food chain kind of thing. And I'm like, I know there's people better than me out there, so I have to find them.
Hmm. Sure.
So I started getting some coaching from a few amazing coaches, and one of them was offering a trip to Egypt. And at first I was like, that would be super cool. I want to do that. And it would be really cool to meet older women because her demographic of clients was maybe 10 to 20 years older than me. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is going to be awesome because then I can surround myself with like-minded women who have lived more life. So this is awesome. So I just wanted to be around that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I, at first was pretty dismissive of Egypt. I was like, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't going to work out. And then one day I just decided
Hmm.
that I was going to go. And it didn't really make sense. I didn't really have the means to go. I had to cancel or move another trip so I could go. And long story short, I ended up figuring out how to pay for it. And people gave me money, and I had someone to watch my child, and I was on my way all by myself, flying across the ocean, which is, by the way, when I realized I'm on an airplane flying across the ocean all by myself to meet a group of 13 women that I've never met before for 14 days. Like, at the second, you're like, was this the best idea ever?
Yeah, you had
But
a
I
little
knew it was.
self doubt. You had a little self doubt.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So.
logic says maybe not the best idea, but my whole body felt like it was appropriate to do. So it was a split second, but I just remember it like, nope, we're not having that conversation right now. We're doing this. And obviously I had no choice at that
Right.
point
Sure.
either. So I arrived in Egypt and was instantly greeted with adoration. There was no competition. There was it was just like, okay, we're all scared shitless to be in this foreign country. We don't know what we're doing. We have all the stuff we want to learn through this mentor, and we were all in the same place, and we were all um, wanting to find our place in the world. So I felt womb space with them. I felt welcomed and loved, and I'm going to cry when I talk about it because I always
Oh.
do. So that happened. And then as time carried on, I remember being on a bus with them and we were just sitting around and it was like this idea came through me, and it was, hey, you should start a women's retreat called the FEM Farm. And then I just was like, hey, that's a cool idea. And then I turned to someone next to me on the bumpy bus ride where, we could have died at any moment, because I don't know if you've ever been to Egypt, but they drive really crazy there and super close to each other. So we had to close the curtains on our bus so we didn't look at what was happening outside. But I turned to my friend and I was like, what do you think of this idea? And then they were like, oh, yeah, that's a super great idea. And then you could do this, and then you could do that. And then it just expanded and expanded and expanded. And so it was from that experience that sort of birthed from the womb space this idea.
Yeah, a lot of people are walking around with emotional open wounds, actually, that they're hiding. If you touch them, they're going to go like this, right? They're just going to collapse. So many
Right.
people, I would say that emotional wounds or open emotional wounds is a absolute pandemic. Never mind coronavirus. I think people
Yeah.
are emotionally sick more than anything else, and they don't know how to express their emotions anymore. There's no,
Accurate.
when people often talk about, oh, I wish things were like they were when they were tribes. You ever hear this, right? It's like, let's go back to the golden era when we lived in tribes. I mean, and they talk about, living in harmony with nature. All that stuff's nonsense. Tribes never lived in harmony with nature. Humans always killed as much as they could, right? I mean, we know that, right? We know that humans never, like, the First Nations peoples of America didn't sit back and say, don't kill that baby mammoth because it needs to grow into a big mammoth, and they killed the baby mammoths and then killed the father mammoths and killed as much as they could, and they didn't store the food. If they could kill another one, they did. So we know that.
Well,
but
you ever been to a buffalo jump?
Hang on. I'm in the middle of a point here.
No, I'm amplifying your point.
Oh, yes. So the buffaloes were running off the jumps. Yeah, like they killed everything they could. Okay, and they ate whatever they ate until it went rotten. Okay, but the point is this, though. When people are longing for tribal days, I feel like they're longing for a sense of community and a sense of belonging and a sense of egalitarian hierarchy. That my dad is on the tribal council because he's one of the men in the tribe, and my mom is on the tribal female council, whatever it is, and women do this and men do that. And when I grow up, I'm either going to be in a different tribe or I'm going to be on the tribal council too. So there's a sense of hierarchy, but it's also egalitarian. Not everyone gets to be the chief, but there was this sense that we were all working together to support one another and survive, and without each other, we die. We don't have that now. People are on their own, man. It's really, it's really, and I also think that feminism has pushed women in a way into their own. Like in a sense, it's like, I really, in looking at it, and I know I'm talking a long time, I'm supposed to let my guest talk, right, Scott? I know. But I almost feel like there's a sense that women are now, first of all, they're engaged in some sort of larger quest that they represent all women, which I think is very wrong, okay? I don't think that women should do anything for the greater cause of women. I think they need to go to the FEM Farm and focus on themselves. But I also feel like they have to. They also have these competing instincts now of like, oh, I want to get ahead with my career, but I also, which is like a socialized instinct, right? In America, it's like, oh, you got to have a career and you want to advance and you want to be an engineer, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a nurse, a doctor, whatever it is you're doing, you want to advance that career, and they work hard from say 16 to 30, but then all of a sudden they start to remember this primordial longing to give birth, to be a mother, starts to swell up in them, and it's like a primordial calling, and like they're right in the prime of their career, and then they're called in another direction. And I don't think feminism acknowledges that primordial call. And I think our society as well, especially America, where there's no maternity leave. I think you guys get 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
In Canada, it's 52 weeks. Okay, in some countries it's 3 or 4 years. But anyway, there isn't an acknowledgement of that primordial draw to motherhood that I think not all women have, but I think most women have, and they deny it and they suppress it. and they crush it. And they think it's wrong, or it's lower, or it's not as good, or it's better to be in the corporate world. And I think that's a real form of self-wounding that women do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
I
right.
remember.
Am I right? Am I right? You said, but am I correct?
I feel like the feminist movement originally, maybe just, I don't know if they were against having children or whatever. Obviously, it's our right. I feel like it wasn't something they were against, but not acknowledged. It was like, nope, our focus is over here. Our focus is equality in the workplace, but not sort of giving a nod to that was probably a mistake, because I mean, that's the reality. So I will tell you, so I have a 6-year-old boy, and I was working at the time for a super crazy advertising agency. And I remember sitting home on my maternity leave and just reevaluating everything, just being like, I was so in my feminine and I was so obsessed with my child. I tried to describe this to other people, and at the time I wasn't as spiritual or woo woo as I am now, but I felt cords from my body to my child's body.
Those are
I felt
real.
energy.
Those are real.
I didn't have
Sure.
anybody to talk to about that. Nobody knew what I was saying. And I was like, oh, I feel this and I can't deny it. I felt these cords to my child.
Mhm.
And then the level of obsession I had over him. And I'm like, I have never
Not
felt
obsession.
this.
Obsession is the wrong word.
Obsession, not negatively.
Yeah,
Obsession
it's
is.
not the right word. I know what you mean, but obsession is not the right word. It's engagement. Engagement.
I was pretty obsessed. I mean, I gotta say, obsessed is the right word for
Okay.
me to describe it. So nothing else really mattered, and it was like I sort of looked back and was disappointed in myself about how much I gave to my corporate job and how little it meant in the end.
Okay. So
And I was like, I have a child, and this is what's important.
here's exactly. So here's exactly. Men never feel that.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
sorry. 95% of men have no understanding of that feeling. Maybe there are some men that are very highly feminine that feel that draw of the maternal. But let me tell you this. Man goes to work. Let's say his man gets wife pregnant. Wife gives birth. Man goes, wow. Oh my God. The cords from him are right to work, into earning, hunting, providing.
Exactly.
Right? So your dad goes out, he's like slinging, chopping trees, farming. I got to feed this kid. I love him so much. I got to work so hard. There's no sense that working hard or leaving that kid to go to the workplace, that's being a good dad. From the primordial draw. That's what men do. They protect and they provide. That's what they do. So when they're doing that, there isn't this cognitive dissonance that women feel. And cognitive dissonance is a real problem for women, because now they have those primordial spiritual chords, and then they're like, but I got to go back and provide. And those two things are antithetical. And so then they leave one and they pursue the other. Right? It's cutting the baby in half, as in Solomon's story, right? It's like leaving one to pursue the other, and it's like women are constantly, mothers in the workplace are in a constant state of cognitive dissonance, and they're pulled and they're pushed in both ways, and that in a way that men will never understand. They will never understand it. And how do we untie this knot, Heather Petersen?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I would love to. I think having conversations like this brings awareness to men. I'm sure what I just said, a lot of men would be like, what? I don't understand that at all. But hopefully it raises awareness to what our actual struggle is. So, like me saying the word obsession, you're like, I don't think that's right. And I'm like, no, it's right. Like, that's an example of the difference between the two mindsets and understandings of what it's like to have a kid and
for
a job
woman,
that you
for a woman
once cared. Right.
Like I think there's I think there's like competing instincts, and the feminism is and I believe wrongly, and I don't know if this is because no one can actually tell me what feminism is, to be honest with you. No one can lay it out for me. It's like a personal thing that changes for every woman, and a lot of times it's a defensiveness.
It's a feminine energy because it's creative and it can't be defined.
Oh, you just blew my mind.
Yeah. So that's why.
Feminism is pure chaos. That's why I can't understand it. It's chaos.
And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just feminine energy.
It is bad and it is good and it's also benign.
Right.
It's everything.
Right. Exactly.
It's all of it. So let me ask you. So many women are struggling with this in Western culture. So many women. And I feel like would not, and then you hear like it's, and I do a podcast for something called the Pregnancy Care Center, which is a place for women to go who are in crisis pregnancies that want to give birth. They're non-political and they don't take issue on the debate, pro-life, pro-choice, or whatever. They are pro-life. It's started by pro-life people, but they're non-political. They're not interested in arguing with people about laws and regulations. Mm-hmm. This is a place, you're a prostitute and you want to have your child, you come here. Your husband is forcing you to have an abortion and you don't want to, you come here. It's just an option for women in crisis, right? And I feel like the debate is on these two polar extremes. Okay. And in the middle, there's victims, right? There's people that are vulnerable. And then you have the same thing with feminism. It's either like, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm the champ, or I'm the working mom and I'm the champ. And there isn't like this sense that, hey, gosh, wouldn't it be great if everybody could do what they're, when it comes to the relationship with their children and how they're going to raise it, that we didn't judge one another and we simply offered support for those choices. Like to me, those two debates, feminine debates, the abortion debate and this workplace maternity leave. I think the longer the maternity leave, the better. If people choose to take it, if the father wants to take it when the child is 12, like it's just a time frame that's given to parents. And I just feel like, why does it have to be an either or like, why does there have to be a feminist movement that, in a way, in my mind, denigrates motherhood or pushes it as a second tier life choice? Why is that? Or why does it seem that way? Or am I wrong, Heather?
I think that there is a lot of that I'm seeing. And then there are women on the other side of that who are pressured to have children or to get married.
Yes.
They just don't want to. And they're like, I'm providing everything I need for myself. I don't need this. Or I have found that relationships don't give me what I need, and I am better at giving myself what I need. And I think more of that is happening because if we both have masculine and feminine energies, and most of them are toxic, or if we have mostly toxic masculine or toxic feminine, or one person's super toxic feminine and the other person is super toxic masculine, or a mix of both, like we don't have good examples of what we need in relationships even. And I think there's just a lot of work to be done. One of the intentions I have for the farm is to inspire not only women to acknowledge feminine energy, but also to inspire men to see us be in our brilliance, in our feminine energy, which they will naturally do because feminine energy is magnetic. It draws people to it, and it is lovely and beautiful and inspiring on its own. And I mean, we can't go through our daily lives uninspired. So the feminine is needed on this planet no matter what. And if I can make a tiny little drop in the bucket to help women feel that, I'm going to feel pretty good.
I just wrote down feminism is chaos by its nature. Because that was such a beautiful insight, actually. There could be no other way, actually.
Yeah, people are like, we can't define it. And then, of course, linear masculine energy doesn't really like that because it's not defined. So if you were to look at masculine and feminine energy as if there were water and like a riverbed, right? So the masculine holds the water, which is the feminine energy and the flow. and the creativity. So without each other, the masculine, if the masculine does not have the feminine flow, the water, it dries up and it's basically nothing. It's no longer a river. And then if the feminine energy comes out and there's nothing to hold it, then it also absorbs into the earth and there's nothing. So we need each other
That's so
within
insanely deep. It's unbelievable, actually. I'm gonna cry now. The the so so I've been of this opinion for a while. The idea that men and women are locked into some sort of cosmic struggle against each other is like a sin to believe. That's
I
a
agree.
sin.
There's no struggle. It should be the most beautiful, rewarding thing of all time. If we can find out what our healthy masculine, feminine energies are within ourselves and have that in another reflected back to us in,
Hmm.
this
Yes.
fashion, just like that's what it's about. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's like this, even in history, when I took a women's studies course um, for a little while, then I left. Um, but the idea that you can interpret history through the lens that that men are these have been the idea that men are I don't know what the right word is. Are the overlords of women throughout creation? I just don't see that as correct. I don't.
Mhm.
I don't think. I think that the when we're at our worst, we are tyrannical. Yes, and
Mhm.
sometimes that's a discrimination, a form of tyrannical discrimination against men on women. Sometimes it's by race, sometimes it's in other ways, but I don't think in nature, well, maybe by our nature, but when we are at our best, we are in communion, men and women, with one another. There's like a sense of communion there that
Mhm.
I think goes unacknowledged in these debates.
Yeah, and the parts that are hard for you to do on your own, you get support or you get to relax into from somebody else, and there's a trust there. And like as an example, so I actually have a lot of masculine energy. Um, I have the creative entrepreneurial thing, but action and doing is very masculine, and I've clearly acted and done a lot of things. So um, sometimes um, I need the feminine energy of somebody to sort of balance me out on the other side, which can be very difficult. But so to relax into somebody else where your deficits are is a beautiful thing.
So, yes. So I'm actually very high in feminine energy. So, and I have a bit of a theory. Okay, so most men that are highly creative, um, okay, let's do it this way: glam rock star lead singers.
Hmm.
They all look like
Hmm.
girls. Bon
Hmm.
Jovi, Axl Rose. Like if you look at pictures of Axl Rose, who's a very attractive man, okay? But if you
Hmm.
look at those Rolling Stone pictures of him with the hair, he's almost like a hermaphroditic Greek statue in his beauty. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And the
Yep.
creative force of his lyrics. So you take Bono from U2, very feminine man. Axl
Hmm.
Rose, John Bon Jovi. You take these guys; these are very attractive to women in one sense, but also very feminine. It's like
Hmm.
if you actually spoke the lyrics of "One" by U2 to somebody, you'd be like, "What? What are you talking about? It's so weird."
Yeah.
Like it's weird for a man to talk. It's so anti-masculine actually to express that level of vulnerability. Right? Men don't do that, but somehow these singers, these male artists are expressing their feminine side in this way that we're highly
Hmm.
attractive to. So yes, you do have a lot of masculine energy. But
Hmm.
I want to ask you, so the masculine is that which protects and provides. Okay? So that
Hmm.
river embraces, protects, or
Hmm.
gives, or brings form to, is another way to think about it,
Yeah.
or calls
Hmm.
form to, or structure to, which is what you're doing with the
Yeah.
FEM Farm. You're saying this femininity needs some structure, and I want to talk to
Exactly.
Michael about it because we
Hmm.
can. We have these opposite sort of thing going on between you and I. And the feminine is that which creates and What is it? So I know it's protects, provides, brings form to. The feminine creates. I was looking at my notes here as we were bringing it out, but it creates, it selects. That's what I said. It creates and selects. How do we
and
that? You go ahead. Yeah, I'm going on here. Go ahead.
and expresses. So feminine is expressive. Yes.
And receives.
So I think that's yes.
You said receives as well, right? So it creates, selects, and receives. See, I think this is the nature of it. And when you say masculine and feminine, it's like, if you're feminine and you're struggling emotionally or whatever, maybe you're offending that creative, selective, and receiving side of yourself. Maybe you're acting out your masculine energy, and it's exhausting for you because it takes effort.
Yep, exactly.
And you're building a place where people can come and reflect on that? How dare you?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I know, right? I think it's just when women get around each other and just learn, hey, we are all the same. If I'm a woman who does not have a child, a woman who does have a child, a woman who's working full time, a woman who stayed at home, a young woman, an old woman, we are all connected. And that is also very a feminine energy, the networking and the spider web of connections. That's us. And one of the other examples I heard that I really liked, talking about men and women's brains. So taking it out of masculine, feminine, but I think I found this to be mostly true. The brain of a woman is like spaghetti, where it's like everything's crossing and, all blah, 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 and it's all one big mass of spaghetti. And then a man's brain is like a waffle, I think, where everything's compartmentalized and in lines. And I think that's mostly true. And I should say masculine, feminine, but that was presented to me in a way that was the mind of a man and the mind of a woman. And that also has to do with like hormones and all of that stuff as well. So I thought that was interesting. And again, there's chaos in the spaghetti, and there's the linear way and the structure in the waffle. So,
you know what they should teach in school? So I went to an all boys school. I'm going to tell you in just 1 second. I went to an all boys Catholic high school, and so like sex ed was by a brother, and it was like, okay, lads, you just take it easy. He's Irish guy, Irish brother. Just take it easy when you get out there. It's really a lot of pressure there, lads. You go out there and you just be careful now when you get out there, because the girls are so on and on. Anyway, so but they should, instead of teaching men and women, or men, I'm going to talk about men right now, about the mechanics of the sex act. Okay, like this is a penis, this is a vagina, this is what happens, and blah, blah, blah. I think they should teach men about the cycle of estrus and the cycle that women are under. And maybe because so I have 3 daughters and my wife, and I watch, like, I actually am living with my wife with 4 different women with my wife. And maybe someone's going to throw a tomato at me here or something at
You're
the
so
screen.
great.
What's that? Sorry?
I said, you're so great.
No, but I'm actually living with 4 women, because there's a woman like at the beginning of her cycle, there's a woman in estrus, and there's a woman in premenstrual syndrome, and there's a woman and then there's a woman when she's pregnant, actually, too. Like, those are different people, actually, literally, hormonally. Like, I found out that chemically different, actually. Like, as if someone was like, okay, this week of the month, Michael, you're going to be really emotional. You're going to cry during some stupid kids movie. Why am I crying? I have no idea. Oh my God. It's right. And I'm, if they just pointed this out to people and said, look, this is what happens. And it's usually 28 days, but sometimes some women it's 26 days and other women it's this. And then when they live together, it goes into communion. Like, how weird is that?
I love this conversation coming from the male perspective.
Like, how weird is that? That, like, they're in, like, the same cycle with each other. Like, they're like, okay, we're living together in this hen house now, and next thing you know, they're like, their cycles start to line up. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, and nobody teaches us anything about this. Come
Just
on.
go in, figure it out.
In 2020, we can teach kids about, anal, oral, and vaginal sex, but we can't teach them about that. I mean, that's the everyday life shit. They're gonna figure that other stuff out on their own. Actually, I got news for you, bro. They're gonna figure that out on their own.
Yep. Accurate.
Yeah, not that difficult. Not that difficult. Woo.
It's probably very overwhelming for men, just not, women, we just deal with it. Like, we are chaos incarnate. We're just basically housed with our bodies, but everything about us is in constant turmoil, and it deserves to be respected instead of like feared,
and even protected and honored. Forget about it. How many cultures worshipped women? Like I got a theory for you. I call it womb theory. Okay? It's called womb theory. My belief is that all of history prior to 1914. So I think 1914 was a paradigm shift in human consciousness. Okay, the First World War was so devastating. Well, in Western human consciousness, let's say. Maybe something else was going on in other places, but in our what do you call that, grand consciousness together, there was a shift when that war started, and what happened after is a different set of history. But everything before that, my belief, is about the protection of wombs and the acute, like, men are basically evolutionarily, they're worthless. Okay? So if you kill, like, let's say in a tribe, you kill 25% of the men, you're going to still have the same population in the next generation. It doesn't matter. Right? So the male, this is that which protects and enters and goes forth into the world and this sort of stuff. They're in a way, they're disposable, and in a sense, that's how we treat men today. We still treat them as disposable, in a sense. I remember when the first woman soldier died in Iraq or in Afghanistan in Canada, and what a massive thing that was on the news. I think we had 150 young men die, and we honored those men. When the first girl died, it was massive news. And then Canada wanted to pull out of Afghanistan after that, and we don't want to be involved anymore, right? Because men, in a sense, even though we love them and we love our sons, they're disposable evolutionarily. We know it. Primordially, we know it. And women are these things that we protect. It's everything men do is not for money. It's for wombs. Everything they do is to protect the wombs, is to keep the wombs from other men. And my belief, and people can say, what the hell do you know, Colligan? And that's actually a great question. They can ask that all they want. What the hell do I know? But my opinion is this, if you care, is that the reason why there's a Finnish language, the reason why there's a Swedish language, and all these different cultures around the world, is because a lot of men died keeping other men from going near those women. And that's how the creative force, in a sense, is protected. This feminine creative force is protected by the masculine creative force. And then that feminine creative force then is that which selects which masculine gets to breed. And that selection is based on courage and honor. And the guy that's not afraid, who's not a coward. No woman would select a coward. No woman would select a pussy grabber to be their husband. You understand what I mean? And if we look at all cultures in the world, no culture honors cowardice in a man. Now, cowardice in a woman or children is in fact understandable in all cultures. It's like, well, maybe that's not, and I hate to say it, but that's the truth. But cowardice in a man, no culture honors that. And no culture, there's things about us. And so you have to go out and protect the wombs, boy. And if you do a good job doing that, you get to be with one of the wombs. And in a sense, that's how it works. And that's the reward. And with that comes power and money and the other things, the accoutrements of it. The money and the power, Tony Montana has it wrong when he says first you get the power, then you get the money, then you get the girl. No, it's all about the girl, actually, for men. That's what it's about.
And even if it's subliminal or whatever, that's the number one party. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. There was a big advertising campaign that didn't do very well. I don't know if the world was ready for it, but I think it was like, um, I I want to say it was like a vaginal wash or something like that, like a female care thing. And it was like, it's all about the V, take care of yours, or something like that. And it showed men in like battle and all of this stuff. And it was probably like 5 years ago that this commercial aired, and then it was like immediately removed. But it totally aligns with what you were just talking about. That is the reason that
That,
wars are fought.
I hate to say it, but I like. Okay, so you ever heard of the pickup culture that's out there on the internet? This red pill,
Mm-hmm.
what do you call that? Incel? What is it, Scott? Incel?
There's like you're conflating a few things, but there's like pickup artistry, the men's rights activism, and involuntary celibates, and
Yeah,
they're all jerks.
they're all facing the same problem. Okay, so for example, involuntary celibate, guess what? You have twice as many female ancestors as male. You know why that is? Because most men never bred. They weren't worthy of it. They never got to the point, or they died in war, or they died doing something else. This idea that there's a right to copulation is as ridiculous an idea and most offensive, actually, that you can get. If you want to offend women, tell them they have an obligation to have sex with you. Like, that's the most unattractive thing you could possibly do, man. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing, the idea and that's why Harvey Weinstein's in trouble, right? That's why these guys are in trouble now. Because when it gets out that, well, hang on, what did you do? You didn't rape her. So what happened? Oh, you used your power over her to get sexual favors? Yeah, that's the same thing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean?
It's been happening for so long.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that it started happening I wouldn't say it's been happening for millennia. I would say I'm sure it has in the courts of kings and stuff like that, but as a general rule, this idea, maybe it has, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that idea is offensive to the naked ape. To this monkey, he doesn't like that. So when we see it, it's like, well, it's transactional sex. Well, yes, you call it whatever you want, but it's offending that which selects.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? And so it's wrong. Whether it should be a criminal offense or whatever, it's not up to me. But it's wrong. We know it's morally wrong. Whether it's legally wrong is a different story. So these incel, rational male kind of pickup artists. So pickup artistry and the idea of the red pill kind of stuff, that is toxic femininity. This idea, the idea of the womanizer, someone who lies to a woman to get in her pants, or like makes up some sort of fake story of status, right? Like, I'm going to be the legitimate billionaire tonight, and you support me, and we'll lie to these women, and maybe they'll believe us. Well, first of all, we have to reduce the naivety of these women so that they know that these bastards are out there seeking to trick them into it's like, it's so non-masculine to do that, to lie about who you are. Like, how is that masculine in any sense? There's absolutely nothing masculine about that. To lie about who you are, what your status is, what your family name is, where you come from. No, you protect that and you stand up for who you are and you honor that. That's what a man does. A man doesn't lie about who he is. It's like, there's so many things in our society that have been turned upside down. And this idea that, how could you ever come to the idea that a woman owes you sex? You're watching too much porn, buddy. Got to stop watching porn. I hate to say that, but I think maybe it comes from that. I don't know. I'm way off on a tangent. I mean, we need a man farm. We need a man farm too.
You can have a man farm. It'll be so great.
We're going to shoot and
Why
we're going to hunt and we're going to drive snowmobiles.
It'd be great. I do think men need that time and space to do those things also, away from women, away from, so you guys can do nothing, because while you're protecting us or stabilizing us as women, that's got to be exhausting all the time. So I know women make fun of men for going out camping or whatever. What do you guys talk about? We don't talk. We just sit there. Or they're like, how can you go and just not talk? They're like, you don't get it. You guys need that silence. You need that reprieve. You need that time of like regaining your strength, because if you're constantly containing us and we're constant chaos, that gets to be a lot. So I honor that man farm idea.
Woo! Heather Petersen.
Good stuff.
That was fun. That was fun today. I got to go back to your. No, we covered all of it. So it's a sisterhood.
Sisterhood, exactly.
Sisterhood. Well, I can have sisters and brothers, folks. If you're listening to this, if you made it all the way with Heather and I, it's been an hour and 17 minutes or whatever. We thank you, both of us. I know she's grateful as well that you listen to this, our conversation, and we hope that from this that you take an understanding of the mission that Heather's on. Actually, it's a mission. It's an entrepreneurial journey. So, is there a website for the FEM Farm yet? Is there some social media?
There
Heather?
sure is. Thefemfarm.com.
Boom. Thefemfarm.com. Check it out. There's going to be events. I'm going to be following it. That's for sure. And I know that if you've come this long in a podcast, your ego is coming out now. You've always wanted to start a podcast. You know it. You know you do. And it's a pain in the ass. I do lots of podcasts, and I've had a lot of people that have come up to be competitors on some of the podcasts, and I wish them all the best. I mean, there's lots of room out there. But you know what? None of them ever get past 3, 4, 5 episodes. The reason why is because it's a hell of a lot of work. So if it's worth starting a podcast, maybe it's worth saving, $2,000 Canadian, which actually isn't that much American, and getting Scott to do all the other things, getagripstudios.com to do all the other things that are involved in doing a podcast other than the content. And trust me, I've done probably 1,000 podcasts now. And if I had to produce them all, it would probably be 2026 right now, not 2020. So without Scott and the other producers I've had over the years, don't waste your time figuring out that. There's no app that you can download on your phone and the next day you have the Joe Rogan experience. It doesn't work that way. You got to go to getagripstudios.com, fully virtual, anywhere in the world. Check it out, getagripstudios.com.